with you.
Dan as well.
Mark, Juju said that what was most noteworthy to many was your very public engagement on a whole range of issues that are important to this community after October 7th. But I do not want to start with October 7th. I want to start with a few years before October 7th, when you and I first got to know each other, when you were working on a separate issue, although it's connected, which is the issue of anti-Semitism, how one defines anti-Semitism, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, and all your work on that front. So let's start with that, and then we're going to get to where we are now. But why were you involved with that issue?
You know, it seemed to me that having a definition of anti-Semitism was the thing we needed to do to start to combat anti-Semitism. Because I thought we were mostly in denial as a community about where anti-Semitism came from. It was always clear to me that there was anti-Semitism on the right. It was obvious, it was violent, it was also predictable, and we had lots of allies. What I struggled with, and what I think our community struggled with, was acknowledging the anti-Semitism on the left. And part of it was the couching of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, and caught up in particular the university culture. And when I went to go visit politicians and when I went to go visit university administrators, everyone kept saying, well, we have no standard. Well, guess what? We now have a standard. And I worked hard for that standard, and I do think that is part of the basis that we need to combat on a go-forward basis.
So fast forward, again, before I want to anchor this pre-October 7th, because you were zeroing in on a number of these issues before October 7th. About 6 months ago, so it was around Yom Kippur, you had focused in on issues related to some very hostile to Israel, hostile to the Jewish community, efforts going on campuses. And I want to talk about that experience, but were you just identifying general, or I guess were you generally concerned about the stifling of viewpoint diversity generally at our elite cultural institutions, which is an issue that affects Jews, but it doesn't only affect Jews?
Look, I think we can say that I'll talk about Penn specifically, which I know. We can say that we have an anti-Semitism problem, and I do think there is anti-Semitism, but I don't think that is the totality of the problem. Because if it is anti-Semitism, we're fighting that battle mostly by ourselves. We're 2% of the population. I think we're actually fighting a slightly different battle. We're fighting a battle against illiberalism. We're fighting a battle against the lack of merit. We're fighting the battle against the oppressor versus oppressed, powerful versus powerless. And we find ourselves as Jews caught up in a bigger trend that is not just about us. When I see the kids out protesting on college campuses from the river to the sea, what river? What sea? Who lives between the river and the sea? How did they get there? No one knows. And I actually find that as hopeful and optimistic. I believe that what we're watching, in part, not in total, and I don't want to be Pollyannish about this, this is where the cool kids are. There is a progressive narrative, a narrative of oppressor, oppressed, powerful, that has taken over our college campuses. It rejects truth. It rejects facts. It evaluates everything in the context of victimhood. And so if we don't call the problem, if we don't actually call out the problem by its name, we're unlikely to correct it.
Okay, so then I want to fast forward to October 7th. You had been a trustee of a university for a number of years. You've been involved with, you mentioned Penn, you've been involved with Penn for a number of years, but you and your peer group had also been involved in a whole range of academic and I'd say very elite cultural institutions. October 7th, I'm sad to say, shocked me not only because of the barbarism that we watched unleashed on Israel on October 7th, but it also shocked me because I actually believed that it was so ghoulish and brutal and grotesque that finally the world would see. Finally, you know, the outrage would be directed at those massacring Jews. And instead what we saw at many elite institutions in the West is the outrage actually wasn't directed at those who unleashed the massacre on the Jews. The outrage was directed at Jews for objecting to being massacred.
100%. That's exactly what we saw. But if you had spent your entire life as a university administrator with a world view that was couched in this oppressor-oppressed, powerful-powerless narrative, you have one thing, it's inconsistent with everything you've done for 20 years. Are you going to reevaluate, or are you going to double down? And what we saw was a doubling down. And I think it was so outrageous, and it so shocked the community, our community, that we finally got action. And it's not, I think my dharma, unfortunately, is to tell the truth, for better or worse. And Nasir, that's all I can say. Yeah. But I have to be honest, 27,000 University of Pennsylvania alums stepped forward and said that they were not going to fund the university so long as the current president and current chair were in office. And by the way, I went on TV and I actually publicly called for the resignation of the president and for the chair, and everyone kept saying, oh my God, that took so courage. I have to be honest with you, telling the truth feels great, and you should all try it. It's really good. And unlike Nasir, who suffers from this, I know we're in the right place now. I walk on the street, and yes, there are people who protest, but the vast majority of people just hug me and say thank you. And that's what you should all expect. We are fighting a fight where we are telling the truth. We're fighting against something that is absolutely and completely illogical, which does not mean it will not persist for a period of time. But we also have lots of allies. That's what this Penn process has taught me. Yes, 27,000 alums stood forward, but the professors, the department heads, the administrators, they stepped forward too. They are living in a culture where the leadership of these universities has determined a dominant narrative. The administration has carried out that dominant narrative, but faculty is not monolithic. If I just take Penn as an example, if you're a Wharton professor, you're interested in merit, academic excellence, and research. If you are an engineering professor, merit, academic excellence, and research. If you're in the med school, 70% of the professors at Penn are actually doctors in the hospital. Academic excellence, merit, and research. If you're in the School of Arts and Sciences, liberal arts, not so much. But my point of this is, if you think back to what's happened on these campuses, Larry Summers was fired essentially for pissing off the faculty. That taught a group of university administrators, presidents, you can't piss off your faculty. Guess what? We now have 2 presidents who have been forced to resign primarily as a result of their alumni. It is up to all of us to decide that we want to tell the truth, we want to get involved, we want to use the positions that we have to make our voices heard, and not call for special treatment, to call for truth, to call for fairness, to call for no double standards, to call back for the role of merit. And we have lots of allies. We have to make them comfortable stepping forward, and that's what we've been doing.
So I think there are a number of people who believe after that congressional hearing that we all watched, that many of us were, shall we say, underwhelmed by in some of the responses by various university presidents. And then, since then, 2 university presidents have stepped down. And there's a sense like, okay, so there's change happening at the top, we're winning. Do you think we're winning?
I think it's totally uncertain. I think we have a chance. And I think we have a chance now to reverse the tide, but it will take a long time. We've watched this happen, and I do mean we, myself included. We watched this happen for 20 years. It is not going to turn around in a year, but we have a chance for it to start. University presidents, university administrators are on notice that alumni care about these issues, and they are not where these universities are from a narrative point of view.
Okay, but it does require moving down into the organizations. It's not just about the senior levels. I mean, there are cultural issues that go deep in the bureaucracies and the various levels of academia in these institutions. That's my point. I just don't think you...
I have a slightly different observation.
All right.
I believe that most of these in academia, I believe most people are cowards. They want their job, they want their research dollars, they want their tenure track. And if the dominant narrative from the top changes, there will always be hardcore people who disagree, but I think it's okay for everyone not to agree. It's okay to have viewpoint diversity. It's okay to have this fight on campus. What's not okay is to have 99% in one direction. You come as a Jewish student, you come as a merit-oriented student to these campuses, and if 99% of the faculty believes one thing and does not support you, it's hard to have viewpoint diversity. It's hard to feel comfortable saying what you will. But we're not going to get everyone to agree, nor do I think we should. This is not about the elimination of opposing viewpoints. This is about rebalancing what has become an extreme viewpoint.
Since October 7th, and I'm sure you've experienced this, I'm sure most people in this room have, you find yourself in a bunch of new WhatsApp groups. Everyone's in these WhatsApp groups, right? And the WhatsApp groups have kind of devolved into people just circulating in the WhatsApp group the latest outrage of the day. Can you believe what the New York Times said about this? Can you believe what happened at MIT last week? Can you believe the protest? I call it the can you believe WhatsApp groups. Everyone has them, right?
Raise your hand if you have.
Right, raise your hand. Come clean. There we go. See? You see? That's right. My name's Dan. I'm in a can you believe WhatsApp group. This is like you've got to. So if you could access every one of those can you believe WhatsApp groups and tell these people, instead of just being outraged about the latest annoying article or incident that you read about, you would tell them to do what?
I tell them to get involved. I mean, we don't yet understand our power as a community. We've been in denial, particularly with the anti-Semitism of the left, the anti-Semitism we see on our college campuses. We have been reluctant to call it out. We have yet to even turn our attention to fighting it. Imagine if we turned our attention to fighting it. I was at a dinner last night and I was reminded of the boards of the cultural institutions in some of our major cities. It's all us. Well, that's how we decided to spend our time over the past 20 years. It's time for us to spend our time on other things. Why would we support institutions that don't fundamentally have a viewpoint that is consistent with our own viewpoint? Why would we be silent? There is so much for this community to do. We have tolerated anti-Semitism. Like, I think of Apollo, we would not hire someone who was anti-black, anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-anything. Why would we hire someone who's anti-Semitic? Now multiply that by every law firm, every consulting firm, every bank, every responsible institution. Who wants to hire racists? We have not, as a community, made it expensive to be an anti-Semite. I think we need to make it expensive to be an anti-Semite. And I don't mean in terms of money. We have tolerated it. We don't want to offend.
Right.
We don't want to make a wave. Right. Okay, those days are over. So everyone in their outrage of the day WhatsApp group, whatever activity you're involved in, whatever board you're on, whatever school district you're involved in, just don't take it anymore. Have your say. We are really powerful as a community. We have lots of allies. We have yet to get started. And I'm fundamentally, like Nasir, incredibly optimistic.
Okay.
Everyone is off the sidelines. October 7th, if nothing else, it's awoken the community. Everyone wants to do something. Now let's channel the energy productively.
Two recent essays, one in The Atlantic by Franklin Foer that just came out called The End of a Jewish Golden Age. John Podhoretz had an excellent essay and commentary called They're Coming After Us. Both these essays and others like it. Dara had a fantastic piece in The Atlantic a month ago, really chronicling how we got here. But it's this notion of the end of a Jewish golden age, that we in America have lived a golden, flourishing, charmed life. And what we've witnessed in the last 4 to 5 months is a bookend, the other end of the bookend. That's over. Jews are not going to have the charmed life that we have had in America.
I just think this was the wake-up call. This is not, like, I'll give you a pen. I don't know exactly where it started, but From the time I was looking at it, Penn at one point was between 25 and 30% Jewish. Now, the best guess is it is sub 10%. Did we get stupider? I don't think we did. So we've been on this slippery slope for a long time, and we've done it in the name of diversity, in the name of other people having opportunity. Who doesn't want other people to have opportunity? Of course we do. But what we've allowed to happen is actually racism in reverse. We've allowed the judging of groups. And so October 7th just made it visible to everyone where we stood. I think this was evident beforehand. I think this has been a slippery slope. And I think there's no more sitting on the sidelines. We're all on notice. This is our time.
Okay, Mark, I want to talk about how you organize your life, okay? You're on the couch here, all right? So
I'll have to
figuratively and literally, right? I want to talk about how you, Marc Rowan, organize your life, because you are running one of the largest asset management firms in the world, something like $650 billion in assets, with thousands of employees, with offices all over the world. It's a pretty demanding job. You have 200 plus partners, not to mention all the employees, then side hobbies, you own restaurants.
I have a few things going on.
You got stuff going on. And therefore, whenever someone has a few things going on, they have a lot of constituencies, right? They have a lot of different people and points of view that they have to manage and be responsive to. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this question, but as we're talking, I'm just genuinely curious. When you spoke up like you did in the fall, and then especially after October 7th, and you went on television to make the statement that you did, and you catalyzed this effort that had extraordinary results, in any of these range of constituencies, because I think there's a lot of people in this audience and who are watching this who aspire to be Marc Rowan, who aspire to have the kind of career trajectory that you have had. And they worry, like, am I sticking my neck out? Are people going to tell me, hey, just get back in your corner?
I'm going to jump ahead because I'm watching our clock, and I know they're going to yell at us.
Clock, whatever. We can,
Look, this is all good. I have to be honest with you. I had no idea that this was going to be positive. This could have gone in any direction. From an Apollo employee point of view, agree with me, don't agree with me, I have to say they are proud that I took the stand I did. I have a number of Apollo partners here today. And not everyone agrees with everything I say, but by the way, that's true everywhere. The notion that we took a moral stand and stood up and just told the truth really resonated. I have lots of US pension funds, lots of teachers' pension funds, lots of government employee pension funds. We think of those entities as being associated with the progressive left. The notion that we took a moral stand has really resonated with these investors. Our largest investors are in the Middle East. I think of, like Nasir, the friends I have in the Middle East. You think of the risk to these kingdoms. The risk is extremism. The risk is political Islam. There's no love lost. They know what it's like to live in the neighborhood. I'll be candid. There's been no blowback from doing this. It's been fine. And I really, I'll come back to what I said, like, telling the truth is actually quite fun. You don't have to be north of 60 to do it either, because you just assume I'm old, so that's it. But no, it actually has given.
It's liberating.
It's very liberating to do. We're not saying anything illogical. We're interested in merit. We're interested in truth. We're interested in facts. We're not interested in a dialogue that views actions not in the context of right and wrong, not in the context of moral or immoral, but in the context of whether it's good for some group or the other group. That's not the America we lived in. The people we're fighting, they're the same people who are fighting 1619 versus 1776. They're fighting against having tests in schools. They're fighting against merit. They're fighting against anything that approaches facts or that would interfere with their narrative. The narrative at these institutions exists at the top. Why don't we ask, who are the 20 worst, or which are the 20 worst universities? Which are the 20 worst civic organizations? Which are the 20 worst philanthropies? Which students participated and led SJP, led in marches calling for the destruction of the Jewish people? There has been no price for being an anti-Semite. There should be a price for being an anti-Semite the way there is a price for being racist.
Okay, so I just want to wrap in saying, if there are many things you could have taken away from this brief conversation, but I hope two will be, everybody has busy lives. Marc certainly has a very busy life and has managed to fit in some extraordinary and high-impact activism and leadership into his life on behalf of this cause at a very important time. And secondly, his experience, I think, is a case study in cause and effect, that you can do something and stuff will happen. It won't always happen, but it will happen. and it will be high impact, and it will have cascading effects. And it's a case study that we should all aspire to.
And it feels great.
And it feels great. Thanks. Thank you, Marc Rowan.